What's up guys, I'm Vincent Rojas and this is Red Reviews and what is my final review of the year. And for my final video of the year, I am reviewing what was quite possibly my most anticipated film of the year, The Boy and the Heron, which is written and directed by Hayao Miyazaki and, in the English dub, which I saw, stars Luca Padovan, Robert Pattinson, Karen Fukuhara, Gemma Chan, Christian Bale, Mark Hamill, Florence Pugh, Willem Dafoe, and Dave Bautista. This is also the latest film by anime movie studio, Studio Ghibli. In this movie, a boy named Mahito, guided by a heron, goes on a quest in another world to find his mother after her death. Before I get into the actual review, I want to start this video off by saying that I love Studio Ghibli. I think that they have the best animation in the entire film industry. It makes me a little sad that not enough people know about this company. Very few of my friends even know what Studio Ghibli is, which is quite disheartening since everyone knows Pixar, right? I mean, everyone knows them. But I think Studio Ghibli is far superior in terms of their overall output of films. This studio has made some of the best animated movies of all time. I'm going to say some titles and you should check out all of them. My Neighbor Totoro, Kiki's Delivery Service, Only Yesterday, Porco Rosso, Princess Mononoke, Spirited Away, Howl's Moving Castle, Ponyo, The Wind Rises, The Tale of the Princess Kaguya, When Marnie Was There. Most of those films are actually directed by Hayao Miyazaki, the director of The Boy and the Heron. These are but a select few films that this studio has under its belt, and it is a crime that I can talk to kids in my school about these movies, and they've never even heard of them. Watch any of the movies I just mentioned, and I guarantee you will love it, and you will fall in love with this studio as I have. They have made only one film that I believe is just straight up not worth the watch, and that would be the movie that came out before this one, 2020's Earwig and the Witch. That is their only 3D animated film, and I sure hope it's their last. Oh, that movie's horrid.
And don't tell anyone I said this, but you can also skip Ocean Waves, The Cat Returns, and Tales from Earthsea. Those aren't that good.
But apart from that, I think all of the other Studio Ghibli movies are worth at least one watch, and I think that they're worth much more than that. Their last 2D animated movie, When Marnie Was There, came out nearly a decade ago in 2014, and the last film directed by Hayao Miyazaki, prior to this film, was 2013's The Wind Rises. 10 years without a Miyazaki movie. But this year's The Boy and the Heron changes that entirely. The Wind Rises was reportedly going to be Hayao Miyazaki's last film, but the man cannot stop making movies. This was also billed as his last movie, but now rumors that he's working on a new film have come out recently. I can say without a shadow of a doubt that currently, having seen every movie that I've seen in my life, Hayao Miyazaki is my favorite film director of all time. I think he's a master of his craft, and all of his movies represent that beautifully, The Boy and the Heron included. I thought The Wind Rises was a good movie to end on, and I think that this is an even better film to end on. This is a crowning achievement of his work, and he and the whole of Studio Ghibli should be very proud of their work in this movie. With that very lengthy introduction out of the way, let's get into the review proper. It goes without saying that the animation for this film is truly spectacular. As previously stated, I think Studio Ghibli's animation is the best there is, and this movie is a great example of that. Having seen all of their movies, I think Studio Ghibli's animation just gets better and better with every movie, 3D animation aside. When you look at a film like this, and you realize that this is made up of little lines that people drew, you have no choice but to say, wow. As I did multiple times while watching this movie. There are several instances where my jaw was on the floor as I gazed at the pure splendor that is this movie. Some of the sequences in this film are so tightly animated that it just left me floored. I mean, as you look at this footage of the movie I'm playing, how could you not be watching this movie right now? Come on! There is a stigma attached to animated features that they're just for kids, because cartoons are for kids. This is an extremely idiotic notion. I believe animation is one of humanity's most important art forms, and Studio Ghibli's catalog of films exemplifies that. The Boy and the Heron was also apparently Studio Ghibli's first IMAX release, and I'm beating myself up for not having gone to see this movie earlier to see it in that format, since I'm sure it looks amazing in IMAX, but I had other stuff going on. Oh well. So I watched every Studio Ghibli film before seeing The Boy and the Heron, except for Grave of the Fireflies, which is hard to get a hold of due to complicated rights issues. I'd seen about 5 Ghibli films earlier, but having seen them all now in quick succession, I can say that it is amazing to see how much they've progressed in terms of animation, from Nausicaa of the Valley of the Wind all the way to this film. And through all 11 of Hayao's works within Studio Ghibli, there are certain similarities that start to appear. For instance, all of his films deal in some way with at least one of the following 3 themes: nature, war, and aircraft. And some of his films deal with all 3. The Boy and the Heron continues this trend by centering on nature and war, with a slight touch of aircraft in there, just something I thought was interesting. The original title for this movie was How Do You Live, which is the title of a real-life 1937 Japanese coming-of-age novel written by Genzaburo Yoshino, and was recently translated into English by Bruno Navasky. I would like to take a moment to say that this is one of the deepest, wisest, most philosophical, and most introspective books I've ever read. And it's a pretty short read too, so it's a book that I can recommend to pretty much anyone. It's a very easy recommendation. Apparently, this was Hayao Miyazaki's favorite childhood book, and it is the base foundation for The Boy and the Heron. As you can see here, it says that this book inspired his final film, which I guess is now not his final film, since he's working on another one. Anyway, the title of the film was changed to The Boy and the Heron, and while some people think that the original title is better, and I agree, this new title is a smarter move in my opinion, since the film is not a direct adaptation of the book. However, it does have similar themes to the book, since the movie makes you think about life, adulthood, and morality. There are also multiple subtle references to the book, such as tofu, the year 1937, which is when the book was written and set, and the Meiji period it's mentioned, and the Meiji period is a time period which is relatively important in the book. Also, the main character Mahito straight up reads it at one point. This film has very complex themes that I think are good ones to expose to children, such as the cycle of life and death. There's a breathtaking sequence that I won't spoil, but it's one of my favorite moments in any Studio Ghibli film, and it involves something being beautiful but being quickly taken away. The audience feels robbed of good emotions in this moment, but it's when you realize the reason that it was taken away, when you realize the brilliance of the scene, because you're suddenly sympathetic to both sides, the beauty and to those taking that away. Or you're not sympathetic, as some of the characters in this movie aren't. It was a mesmerizing way to capture the beauty of life, the way it can suddenly be taken away, and how this isn't necessarily a black and white matter, regardless of how it seems in the moment. That's a very vague explanation, but if you've seen the movie, you know what I mean. I think this is a brilliant film that is very mature in what it presents to its audience, and it's wrapped in this beautifully animated package. This is, I think, an important film for kids to watch, as is the case for pretty much all of Studio Ghibli's catalog. Moving on to the English voice cast, it was really spectacular. Everyone felt like they brought their all to the film, and there wasn't a single weak link in the voice cast, in my opinion. Now, I'm going to mention one thing that's going to make me look like an idiot, but it serves to give credit to the voice cast, so I'm going to go ahead and say it anyway. So going into this movie, I had seen the trailer, so, I knew what the voice cast was. Robert Pattinson, Christian Bale, Mark Hamill, Florence Pugh, Gemma Chan, Dave Bautista, Willem Dafoe, the works. 2 Batmans, a Joker, Drax, and the Green Goblin. Stellar cast. But I didn't know who was playing who. That's one of the joys I get watching an animated movie, is guessing, who does the voices for characters. However, when I heard the Heron's voice, I immediately thought, oh, Willem Dafoe's doing great. He's doing like a scratchy, Green Goblin type voice. And then the credits roll, and it's Robert Pattinson? What? He was absolutely spectacular as the Heron. I would never in a million years have guessed it was him, but he's truly doing an amazing job. The world building in this film is also extremely well done. That is one of Miyazaki's strengths, I think, is making a believable world that feels lived in. Princess Mononoke, Spirited Away, Nausicaa of the Valley of the Wind, and Castle in the Sky are a few really great examples of this. This movie's world feels tangible and real, even when there's an army of parakeets and the world is kept alive by balancing blocks on a table. The humor in this movie is also really surprising and welcome. This isn't a comedy at all, and yet it has some pretty funny moments, especially centering around the parakeets. It's not like a gut-busting laugh every minute, but I could tell my theater was laughing at pretty much all of the jokes they make. Some of the kookier elements of the world are just inherently funny as well without having to make a joke, and I think that's intentional. Things like the parakeets all going to a bar after a hard day of work, or a parakeet in the background cooking a meal with a frying pan, are just funny moments. The funniest moment of the movie by far, I won't spoil what it is, but it involves plugging an arrow hole, so just be on the lookout for that. Also, there's a really funny moment where they're slicing a big fish open, and it's incredibly gory, but it's played for laughs, and I think that that's just brilliant. Moving on, the main character of the film, Mahito, is a very serious child. He's had a lot happening to him, and his character is very solemn as a result of this. However, the Heron is not this at all. He's not some serene, graceful figure. He's a bumbling, short guy, and the dynamic between him and Mahito is very welcome. They bounce off of each other really well. The film's soundtrack is also exceptional. One of my favorite parts of Studio Ghibli's films are the soundtracks by Joe Hisaishi. I think he's one of the most underrated film composers ever, and I wish more people were exposed to his work. His soundtrack for this movie is definitely more understated than maybe some of its other works, but it fits the tone of the movie really well and totally heightens those moments of wonder. I also really liked how the pacing of the film is handled. It starts out a little slow, which isn't a negative, but the film gradually picks up its pace and it doesn't ever let down, which I believe is how pacing should be done. This movie isn't flawless, however, and while I think that the world building is really well done, there are moments where a bit more explanation for certain things would have been appreciated. However, this is kind of a double-edged sword because putting the pieces together yourself is a strength of the movie, in my opinion. This is a movie that demands its audience to use their brains, pay attention, and think about what it presents, and I think that that's awesome. However, I think sometimes a little more help to the audience could be useful, but I don't think it's anything that a second viewing won't fix. Speaking of, I totally want to go rewatch this movie and appreciate it more, and I'd love to see the Japanese English subtitle version to see how that holds up. I'm no stranger to subs. Also, the film just kind of ends a little too abruptly. I think maybe 5 more minutes could have made the ending just a little bit better, but overall, this movie was fantastic. Please go watch this movie in theaters, support it because we need more movies like this. My theater was packed, which was fantastic, considering that I'm watching this movie like 3 weeks after it came out, and there were a lot of little kids there. I know that this movie's rated PG-13, but it's nothing I couldn't have seen at a younger age. Go take your kids to see it. This is the kind of movie that is really beneficial for a younger audience to witness. Again, I think this movie is a crowning achievement by Hayao Miyazaki, and if he never ends up finishing the film that he's reportedly working on right now, well, I think that this was a great note to end on. Alright guys, that's going to do it for this review. The first anime movie I've seen in theaters, and a great one at that. 2023 is over, and I'll be back in the new year bringing you some more quality movie reviews. Go have a nice year, what's left of it. Peace.